So today we're gonna get into how it is that we can live in the demand zone. We can live in demand zone versus living on the supply side of life. It's like being on the side of life with everybody else that is not the cool side versus being on the cool side. Something like that. Even though that's not exactly what we're talking about, but we're trying to just transpose the mindset to just go to the cool side in this podcast. At least that's the way it's referenced, so that you get the benefits of being on the side where demand is in demand. Stay to the end to find out what I guess I mean. Welcome to the news. And at the same time, we're going to introduce a video game that is just kind of like a joking video game, but it's about street art, and at the same time it corresponds to an old website which had to do with 1,000,000 pixels. 1,000,000 pixels, and 1,000,000 pixels were sold. 1,000,000 pixels were sold, so that by the time all of the 1,000,000 pixels were sold, all brands bought all of the 1,000,000 pixels, so that every single 1,000,000 pixel was sold to advertisers, for example. So we're going to combine that with the essence of augmented reality street art around the world. Augmented reality street art around the world, combined with the pixeling brand. Oh yeah. And finally, we're going to also just chit-chat about basically timing yourself. Just like this is a little podcast that's timed every day, and like every time I sort of push go and record, well, obviously it's timed for a certain period, except this is about timing yourself for everything in the world. Everything that you do in life, in other words, so that you have like a stopwatch, so that your life becomes like a sport, so you make your life feel like a sport, and you can try to beat your times on a day-to-day basis for different little tasks that you do, little small tasks, from like brushing your teeth to going and cleaning the underside of your shoe. If you feel like typically it might take you some time, actually track it. Actually take the time to measure the time by activating the stopwatch on your phone, or activating a stopwatch, or just carrying a stopwatch, because what gets measured gets accomplished. So those are the 3 items which we're going to try to cover real quick. So we'll cycle back to the first one, where we're talking about, in essence, living in the demand zone, living in demand village, living in the essence of demand. Because in essence, like when you really look at the way that life is, and like the idea of economics, it comes down to supply and demand. So it tries to simplify life into that, because that's what economics and that's what life has become, apparently the most important thing in life, according to what life has had to say for quite a long time now. So in terms of economics, viewpoint on things, you have supply and demand. Basically, that's about it. So the way that I try to look at everything in terms of business, and in terms of this podcast, and in terms of reference to just like becoming a better business person, in essence, is reversing them, starting on the demand side. But this is something that I'm trying to talk about in this podcast as like a lifestyle, trying to basically try to move into the demand side, as opposed to dealing with supply basically at all. In terms of a mindset, you want to move into the demand side, because things that are in demand have the essence of people talking to them, wanting to have what they have. Basically, things that are in demand are in that nature. They are in that nature. They're in demand. So when you just look at it simply, and you try to simplify it like that, if you look at it like 2 towns, if you look at the whole world of economics and the economy in terms of 2 towns, you have demand and supply. The one that you can choose to move into, if in terms of the mindset that corresponds to this podcast, is you can move into demand village. You can move into the demand village, and this is what I'm just trying to illustrate, to try to simplify some kind of a concept to transpose into the lifestyle of every person, typically speaking, who wants to just try to like improve their business, or improve their mindset, improve the things that revolve around them, if possible, I suppose, based upon the nature of economics, or the economy generally speaking, that's sort of revolving in, if you will. Because you just sort of have the mindset sometimes to just deal with things as they are, for whatever they are, as they come to you, typically speaking, or as they come to different people. The people just deal with them in the sense that they feel like dealing with them, or they just deal with them the way that nature tells them to deal with them, basically. But if you think of life in terms of these 2 camps, like demand and supply, Typically, how things work is most people, for the most part, live in the supply side. They live in the supply side, the supply village, where they think they want to just be able to go out and sell what their supply is, sell their supply to be able to basically make money regardless of what it is. Like, that's just the typical mindset, because everybody has supply that they want to sell because they want to get money. So that's the typical mindset, typically speaking. I don't know why. It's just sort of what's coming about in this podcast, if you will. So, like, if you choose to move into demand village, if you choose to move on to the demand side, your mindset, I believe, in the sort of the values and the systems that sort of correspond to like how you try to live sort of shift, because you want to try to transpose the mind to be on the side of like everything that is demand, meaning you will try to just go to things that are in demand, meaning things that you let to attract you and you to attract them. You need to try to validate them as things that are being in demand, so that basically it takes some of the skin off of your plate, if you will, in terms of the work that you need to do to accomplish, to get things done, so to speak, because the river is working in your favor, the river of life, the river of energy. If you're on the demand side, then there's already things that are trying to help you to accomplish certain goals that you're trying to fulfill somewhat, because there's already there's people, there's buyers, there's people that want to hear what you have to say, because you're associating with other people that are already dealing with demand, that have already created demand, that have already created a brand. It's similar to trying to buy a business versus starting a business. Because if you're starting a business, there's zero demand for that business. If you buy a business, then the past business owner took years and a long time to build up demand for that business. So you're basically able to buy into demand that's already been built up, which is momentum. And it's momentum, it's marketing dollars, it's word of mouth, it's years of developing and establishing a brand into a culture. And so typically speaking, there are other ways that it translates and transposes into life as well, I believe. If you try to transpose the mindset, typically speaking, of moving into the demand village, then typically speaking, things just are trying to somewhat flow alongside of you, if you will, because you have to go to things that are in demand. You have to actually actively go to the things that are in demand. Like you're basically partnering up in life. You're partnering up. But if you choose to think of things in this way, if you make a delineation of I will only associate with things that are in high demand, then it's just as simple as like that. It's as simple as that, if you will, because it's just is that simple. Like, so just trying to focus on demand. In essence, focus on demand as terms of where your mindset lives. If your mindset lives with that as a precursor, as one single filter, as a filtration system, to focus on just identifying and making the delineation between what is in demand in life and following that closely, versus the suppliers, versus people that are suppliers that are trying to pawn off their supply on other people that are trying to build their business, that are trying to make selling momentum, that are trying to sell their supply and basically don't necessarily know how to do it, and they don't have a lot of demand around them. Demand is sort of the key factor in terms of business. In essence, it's harder to come by. So if you just focus on that one factor, if you will, then that can hopefully change the nature of the village that you live in and live around, and the type of energy that you want to have flow around you, if you will. So that's the basis for that aspect, I suppose you could say. Moving on to the next part, we're talking about the video game. We're talking about the video game making augmented reality art. We want to make one world where we have augmented reality art. So we have a community, we have a system, we have an ecosystem where people can turn on an application similar to Pokemon Go, basically, but people around the whole world can drop art all around the world, but basically like Pokemon Go. So they can drop augmented reality street art all around the world, and we can decorate the world with augmented reality art. And different companies, different brands can buy the pixels. They can buy the pixels of these different art pieces that are around the world, that are spread out around the world, like different digital real estate around the actual world, like the actual world. So if you're driving on a highway, a random highway, and you decide to open the app, then somebody has established, because right now the whole world is open, it's brand new and clear, so they can freely drop a piece of art anywhere in the world that they necessarily want to, because right now all the pixels are present, all the pixels have not been bought out. But this million pixel brand selling website from back in the day, I don't remember what it was called. It was from a few years ago. It was called like 1 million pixels, something along those lines, where every single 1 million pixels was sold for $1 a piece. And a whole bunch of brands all bought all the pixels. And so that person who owned the website got $1 million. that was the idea, that was the basis. So we're just doing this for augmented reality art now, basically, so we can cover the world in NFTs. That's the concept in today's mindset, in today's app of the day concept, for being able to push street art into the world that can develop philanthropy energy, that can be meaningful street art like Banksy's art, basically, but live in the digital space, live in the digital world. So we can have meaningful art, meaningful artists, meaningful connections to art that can span and like take up real estate around the world, because in essence, we want art to be impactful, be meaningful, and to be able to create philanthropy energy in a basic sense, and create a good deeds economy, not just about money, but an actual substitute for good deeds and good deeds economy, and even brands, even branding, because branding is supposed to stand for philanthropy energy. So it's only good causes, good cause brands and branding that is meant to stand and serve in this world, to be able to actually cause philanthropy energy, to be able to actually cause good deeds, to be able to actually develop and help develop the global good deeds economy around the whole world, which is fueled by philanthropy energy. So that these are the brands that are able to take up real estate in this space. And even if they're invented brands, all of these brands in this space, in this online space where people are able to buy these pixels, art pixels in this augmented reality world, that basically the basis of the story needs to be a substitute for philanthropy and philanthropy energy. Nonetheless, that's just our personalization touch to that side of the application. In the Dinky Tech and Change for Game Studios augmented reality world. And lastly speaking, I was just talking about, as like a little side note for a mindset, to be able to time yourself to do menial tasks, brushing your teeth, putting on your shoes, the time it takes you to clean the refrigerator. Time out every single little thing that you do and keep track of this data, because this data is similar to like asset data. If you start keeping track of data and you keep track of these little numbers like this, it's similar to measuring what gets accomplished. What is measured gets accomplished. So that's a measurement statistic gathering mechanism, process that is able to help you continue to aggregate and develop and compile different data from different times that it takes. And every time you start a new task, you push the lap button on your phone, the lap button on your stopwatch on your phone, so that it starts a new lap and you get a new piece of data for a new activity that starts. And then you have the aggregate data of the aggregate time that you're aggregating for the overall timeline that you're still trying to do these separate activities within. So you've got this data to work with, and then therefore that saying that corresponds to what gets measured gets accomplished. It also means that you can improve on your time. You're working towards making life a sport, and you're trying to aggregate yourself to make more faster times and timelines, to be able to beat yourself and make new records for different processes, so you can reinvest the time. If you shave off and save time from doing one task, then you can reinvest that time into other things necessarily. And so it's a really healthy process to be able to measure what you're putting your efforts and energies into, to be able to measure the certain things that are supposed to be most important, and put the most emphasis in those most important tasks, because what gets measured gets accomplished is the saying. So those are the concepts for today. We've kind of run through them, and that's about it for now. Let's also remember, as we say at the end of every day, to push for world peace. Let's push for world peace. Let's push for world peace every single day. Let's push for world peace around the whole world, in every single country. And let's also remember to try to clear the animal shelters. Let's clear the animal shelters so that we can foster all the shelter animals in the world, and we can adopt all the shelter animals in the world, and we can rescue all the shelter animals in the world to clear the animal shelters. And finally, and fundamentally, we can hopefully hire the shelter animals as healers. Hire the shelter animals as healers, especially because they work for free. They don't know what money is. Hire the shelter animals as healers, to give them jobs as healers, so that we can be more harmonious as humans and as humanity, to become more harmonious in our human energy, in our humanity energy, to be able to accomplish more functionality through harmonious energy among all humanity, by clearing the animal shelters and hiring all the shelter animals as healers, and hiring all the animals in the world as healers throughout our communities. That's all for now. Thanks again. Dinky Tech, and Change for Game Studios. Bye, peace, bye.